Weekly News Roundup with Charmaine Colvin. You are listening to Apna Radio 93.9 Dublin South FM. Elon Musk has written on X this week that his Starlink satellite is inactive in India in response to authorities who have seized two of the company's devices in recent weeks, one in an armed conflict zone and another in a drug smuggling bust. Starlink is seeking approval in India to provide satellite broadband services, and the company owned by Musk is trying to address any potential security concerns as part of the process. He wrote on X earlier this week that the Starlink beams are turned off over India and were never on in the first place. Earlier this month, the Indian Army in Manipur state, where a communal conflict is raging, conducted a search operation and found a satellite dish and receiver with a Starlink logo. Military officers claimed it was being used by a militant group, who probably smuggled it through the porous border with neighbouring civil war-torn Myanmar. Early December, Indian police sent a legal demand to Starlink, seeking purchase details of a device found when they caught smugglers at sea with $4.2 billion worth of methamphetamine, one of the biggest Indian seizures to date. The police suspect the smugglers were using the internet device to navigate. An Indian woman who disappeared for 22 years and says she was trafficked to Pakistan has finally returned home after her grandson saw her in a YouTube video. Hamida Banu said she spent the last 22 years as a living corpse, trapped in a neighbouring country and unable to contact her family. Miss Banu claims to have been tricked into going to Pakistan after accepting what was supposed to be a job offer in Dubai in 2002. India and Pakistan have conducted extensive checks on her identity before her Indian nationality was confirmed in October. Miss Banu, a widow with 4 children, was supporting them by working as a cook in Qatar, Dubai and Saudi Arabia. She was approached by an unscrupulous job agent and paid £200 only to find herself detained in a house in Pakistan for 3 months. Her story came to light when an Indian journalist happened to watch a YouTube video by Pakistani social media activist Maroof, who shared it on his platform. She is now happy to be back with her family but says she doesn't want to be a burden to anyone. Delhi's pollution has once again soared to hazardous levels, with a top expert warning that India's toxic air will have a bigger impact on public health than the COVID-19 pandemic. This week, the air quality was 35 times over the safe limits set by the World Health Organization, leaving residents complaining of breathing problems as well as itching in their eyes and throat. Authorities have urged people, especially children and the elderly, to stay indoors as much as possible, while doctors recommend wearing a mask. Frank Hammes, Global Chief Executive of air technology company IQ Air, warns that this is just a short-term measure and much more is needed to be done. He said alarming air pollution levels are a public health pandemic, as toxic air impacts everything from mortality to IQ levels. Every winter, Delhi and nearby states face high pollution due to low wind speeds, vehicle emissions and the burning of crop remains and firewood. The Delhi government reintroduced strict pollution control measures earlier this week, less than 2 weeks after the country's top courts allowed them to be eased. In 2023, India overtook China to become the world's most populous country, according to UN estimates. Despite a population of around 1.45 billion, Indian leaders of 2 southern states have recently been advocating for more children. Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu are providing incentives, citing low fertility rates and ageing population. Andhra Pradesh has even scrapped its 2-child policy for local body elections, with neighbouring states likely to follow suit. India's fertility rate has fallen substantially, from 5.7 births per woman in 1950 to the current rate of 2. Fertility rates have fallen below the replacement level of 2 births per woman in 17 of the 29 states and territories. The southern Indian states lead India's demographic transition, achieving replacement level fertility well ahead of the others. Kerala reached the milestone in 1988, Tamil Nadu in 1993, and the rest by the 2000s. Today, the 5 southern states have total fertility rates below 1.6, which means fertility rates match or are less than many European countries. This has caused concern that India's shifting demographics, with varying population shares between states, will significantly impact electoral representation and state-wise allocation of parliamentary seats and federal revenues. Experts believe the southern states are fearful of being penalised for their effective population control policies, despite being better economic performers and contributing significantly to federal revenues. Also of major concern is India's delimitation of electoral seats in 2026, the first since 1976. And finally, more bad weather in Brisbane ruined a potentially exciting finale to the third test between India and Australia and left the series tied at 1-1. The 5-match series resumes with the Boxing Day test in Melbourne on the 26th of December, where an eager crowd of around 90,000 is expected for the opening day. That's all from me. Have a great Christmas and New Year if you are celebrating it, and tune in 2025 for more news updates on Apna Radio 93.9 Dublin South FM.